Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 319 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight. I'm Falcoholic Kevin, joined for the second time now by, is it second or third time? Because I feel like
Third time.
it's third, yeah, because we had the one before the season, one during the
Right.
season, now one here in the off season. We're going to have to increase that cadence, but, I don't like to come on too strong, swarm with like seven, requests early on. But yeah, we've made it to three. So that's officially friend of the show status once you hit the third show. So congratulations. I know.
Well, I'm honored.
Yeah, great honor, obviously. But guys, Marc Raimondi here. He's at Marc Raimondi on Twitter, over at ESPN, covering the Atlanta Falcons over the last season. Marc, welcome back to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Kevin. How are you? Last time we spoke, you were in a different outfit. You were in your Dragon Con cosplay.
That's right.
So I'm having trouble taking you seriously now, dressed like a regular person. Plus that Syracuse shirt as a St. John's grad. I don't know about that. And
that's tough. Yeah, no, I didn't realize it was like that. I would have worn something else, but I'm not actually the biggest Syracuse sports fan. I support it. My wife teaches at Syracuse, so I was like, okay, well, I got to get some merch, just for the brand. And I feel like if you don't wear at least some merch living in Syracuse, like people start to question you a little bit. So trying to lie low under the gaze of the Syracuse fans. But yeah, I'm doing good as well. It's almost time after the draft is Dragon Con costuming season. So I gotta, gotta start ramping that up. Just a nug for everyone. Getting a 3D printer to start unlocking even more levels of nerdiness, but haven't moved on that yet. But that's in the works, so it's percolating.
I'm hoping to be there promoting my book that comes out in June.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yes, underrated part of Dragon Con is the wrestling scene. The Dragon Con wrestling in particular, top notch. I know a lot of people think of it as just like pop culture, fantasy, sci-fi. No, great wrestling scene. A lot of people come dressed up in wrestling stuff, from WWE to like classic stuff, even to the new wrestling league is skipping my mind. AEW. Yeah.
How could you forget? Owned by none other than Tony Khan of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I know it's been a minute since I followed wrestling closely. I'm getting like more and more tempted to watch into it. I heard the buzz from last weekend. Yeah, it might be about that time.
It's good.
So,
it's good now.
Yeah,
it's good.
Exciting stuff. We are going to also talk about the Falcons tonight. In case you guys forgot, this was a Falcons show.
Right.
This isn't, on the June show. We'll definitely dive into the other topics more. That's the perfect time for those topics. But yes, guys, it is almost free agency. Less than a week now. Well, I guess technically, a week till today, but it's less than, however many hours it is of a week, because it'll be earlier on Wednesday where we'll start to actually get stuff in. Of course, they'll start announcing deals well before Wednesday. That just seems to be like most of the deals now are happening on Monday and Tuesday. But we're going to dive into that, try to answer some of the questions about aggressiveness. What are the Falcons going to be up to? Are they going to be aggressive? Right now, obviously, not a good cap situation. They got a long way to go. We've heard more Kirk Cousins buzz. We'll get into that. Obviously, have to ask everyone who comes on, what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins. But we're going to dive into all that stuff here in just a minute. Before I forget, let me get you guys a word from our terrific sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline remains the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. The NFL is over, yes, but NBA still going. NHL still going. March Madness just heating up. Go check it out. BetOnline.ag. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything. They've got, it's staggering the amount of stuff you can bet on these days. I can't even begin to describe the depths that you can go to. Not that I suggest you dive that deep. Maybe wet your toes a little bit before you go that hard. But from every three-pointer to every hat trick, BetOnline's got you covered with all the odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Make sure when you sign up to use our code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Marc. Well, I haven't gotten your take on Kirk Cousins yet, so we got to start there because that's the first thing I ask everyone. And obviously, opinions range from they have to cut him, there's no way they're going to hold him, to my, stance, which is they can't cut him. They have to hold him and play hardball. So I'm curious. I know you've been around the team a lot, and I'm sure you've also got your opinions on it, but I'm curious sort of where you stand on the great Cousins debate.
Yeah, this is a unique situation, right? Because the three options, none of them are great for the Falcons, and arguably none of them are all that great for Kirk Cousins. I mean, no matter what happens, he's making his $90 or $100 million guaranteed, right? So that's out the window. But for the Falcons, it is kind of a lose in a sense, where I think that at one time when this first happened, where Penix was named the starter, and we didn't know what was going on with Cousins, it seemed like they are certainly going to cut him after the season. In fact, Adam Schefter of ESPN, who was not wrong about these things, he reported that many people in the league expected Kirk Cousins to be cut, before his roster bonus kicks in mid-March. I believe that's March 17th, the fifth day of the league year. So that seemed like it was an inevitability. And then Terry Fontenot comes out, his final press conference of the season, and says, well, hold on a second. We're actually going to move forward with Kirk Cousins as our backup because we've already allocated that money for a starting quarterback. And, Penix is the starter, but that money's already allocated. So you might as well keep Cousins as a good backup. And that took me by surprise, honestly, because I thought, all right, they're gonna move on. It didn't work out, right? For whatever happened, they went 6-3. They ended up going 8-9, missing the playoffs. The Kirk Cousins Falcons relationship just didn't work out. It's like it's a breakup, right? It's like when you're dating a girl, right? You're dating a guy, whatever, and things seem great early. Actually, they didn't seem great early. Wasn't very good early either. But at one point, it was great. Outrun the South, 6-3, 509 yards, franchise record, and then it turned sour. And I think both parties are at fault to some degree for why that was. And now they're in a situation where Kirk Cousins has not really said this outright, but you have to imagine that this is a guy that feels like and wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL in 2025. And the Falcons are saying like, whoa, well, hold on a second. You're actually still under contract with us, and we have you pegged as Michael Penix's backup. So it's a very weird situation. And I did expect kind of like maybe a Denver Broncos deal where, what they did with Russell Wilson, where they just jettisoned them off, ate the money, and moved on. And they did pretty darn well this year at the Broncos, right? They were a playoff team this year. They got their quarterback. The Falcons have their quarterback. That's kind of what I thought would happen, but the Falcons are saying, no, hold on a second. We're the ones holding the cards. We're going to keep you under contract, and you're going to be the number 2 for Michael Penix Jr. in 2025.
Yeah, it is an odd situation, and like you covered it very well. It's not a situation that either one of these parties wanted to be in. And the way that they structured his contract kind of makes it seem like they really weren't expecting it, considering that a cut, just even a post-June 1st cut doesn't save the Falcons any money. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, to me, it's like that seems intentional in some way. Like, as I don't know if it's a negotiating tactic with Kirk, like, look, Kirk, like, you can want us to cut you all you want, but like, we gain nothing from this. So like, you don't have any leverage here. I don't know if that's a coincidence or what, but that number.
Well, the one thing that you can say, Kevin, is that the one thing that they gain is they kind of gain like a fresh start from Michael Penix Jr. with a new quarterback room where he's the guy and he doesn't have to worry about but not that Kirk Cousins is anyone to worry about. Let's be clear there. By all accounts, he was first class as the number 2 guy late in the season this year. So I don't mean to say that he's a problem, but the situation can be problematic just inherently, even if Kirk Cousins is Michael Penix's best friend, because Michael Penix is going to be in his first full year as the starting quarterback on an NFL team, right? And Kirk Cousins is an established starting quarterback who has won many games in the NFL, who has put up numbers in the NFL, right? As soon as Michael Penix starts to, things don't go right, there's a couple of bad games early in the season, there's a tendency to look over your shoulder. It happens. It happens to the best of us, and if Kirk Cousins is the one there, and it's like the team's not playing well, they're 1-3, they're 2-4. Do the Falcons want to make a change to see if they can salvage the season? I mean, this is a results-based business. Let's not forget the coaches and the GM's jobs are on the line as well, just like anybody else. So it's like, could there be a situation where mid-season, things are not going great. To salvage the season, to salvage jobs, they put in Kirk Cousins. And who knows? These are just crazy scenarios that I'm throwing out there. But you see why this is not, even though they cut him same amount of money, keep him same amount of money. But with keeping him, there is that baggage that still exists. And this is also a guy, let's not forget, that, team went 6-3. Things went bad after that, right? They lost 4 in a row. He threw 9 interceptions and 1 touchdown pass in 5 games and never said anything was wrong. Team never said anything is wrong. And then comes out a month ago and says, I got hurt in week 10 and I wasn't really the same the rest of the season. Like, yeah, we all knew something was wrong. You never said it. And then the team is saying, well, we didn't know. So it's like there's all this kind of like butting of heads, and I don't know. I don't see it being a healthy situation if they go that route. But financially, business wise, that might be what they want to do. But they still, like you said, could be just posturing for a potential trade, which is certainly not out of the realm of possibility.
No. I mean, my opinion is that this is all, there's a lot of posturing. I think this is, the whole situation is just rife with posturing, as it is with a lot of stuff in the NFL. In that they obviously, I don't think they want to actually keep Kirk Cousins as the backup. I don't believe that. I think they would be willing to carry him. Probably, I think the idea would be that he's traded before the season starts. That's what they would want, obviously.
Yeah. And look, and some there, and I was throwing out kind of hypothetical situations like the quarterback position. I mean, someone can get hurt in OTAs, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
A quarterback can get hurt in OTAs, and then there would be a need on a potential playoff team for a starting quarterback. And hey, Kirk Cousins is right there. He's an established guy. Maybe a deal. So I mean, maybe they do hold him and wait for something like that to happen, even at the trade deadline, right? Maybe that's something that quarterbacks get hurt every single season. So
yeah, that's sort of my thinking with it, is that it's definitely like, it feels like a game of chicken, and that like you have to hold him through the deadline that you mentioned, March 17th, which means that his 2026 roster bonus guarantees. So that does complicate, obviously, cutting him. Like you're not going to cut him after March 17th. So he's on the roster after March 17th. But
you can designate him as a
you
June,
still can
as a June 1st, and they would be able to kind of break up the money if they do that. That's possible. I don't know if it's likely, and they could designate him as a June 1st cut, even well in advance of June 1st. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of machinations, but and also by the way, Michael Penix Jr. And I'm not trying to put this into the universe, but he's also got the struggle with injuries and had several season-ending injuries in his college career. So
yeah. No, and that's why I think
if Kirk Cousins is not a Falcon in 2025, they'll need to find a sturdy, solid veteran backup for Michael Penix Jr. And I don't know if there are a lot of great options out there that wouldn't cost a lot of money. Not 90 million guaranteed money. But
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's another thing that I know people have brought up is like, if they cut Cousins, it's like now you're going to have to go find another backup too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, the money, I don't think they're not really cutting Cousins for financial reasons. It would be for what you mentioned. And I still think that's the odds-on favorite, that they just cut bait before the bonus guarantees, because that's just what most teams do. That's just what typically happens. I mean, you saw it with the Broncos, and they were in a far worse financial situation with Russell Wilson's contract than Atlanta is right now with this contract. For all the maligning it gets, not that bad. Really not that bad. You're mostly done with it after this season, regardless. So, it's not the long-term wait that some people seem to think it is. It is problematic this year, but that's kind of just the cost of doing business with some of these contracts. But it'll be a fascinating situation to watch. But yeah, I think they would love to trade him, and I think they would preferably like it to happen before the season. But all bets are off as to when that trade can materialize. But I don't think they're going to get an offer pre-March 17th, because for the reasons you said, teams are going to expect them to cut him. So why would they bother trading when they could pay him vet minimum, since he's making $40 million this year from Atlanta in cash, and just some contender could sign him. So it's kind of like they're going to either have to hold him through the 17th or cut him, and I think we'll probably know their intentions, obviously, if he's still on the roster past the deadline on the 17th, then we'll know that it wasn't a bluff. And if he's not on the roster, then maybe it was a bluff, So it's fast. It is kind of fascinating. I mean, it could be the first domino theoretically to fall, but yeah, that one is tricky. So I'm curious.
And I think if he were to get cut, I think there would be a pretty hot market actually for Kirk Cousins, because a lot of teams need quarterbacks in 2025, and the draft only has. I mean, the draft is a complete question mark, right? I know Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders seem like they're going to go high, but the jury is still very much out on how good they could be as NFL quarterbacks, and there's not a lot of veterans available. There's the Sam Darnolds, the Aaron Rodgers is kind of in a similar spot as Kirk. Now it'll be a second year removed from torn Achilles for those guys. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be fascinating. That one's an interesting one. But yeah, that as interesting as it is, funny enough, it's like probably not that important in terms of this year's free agency, because the money is more or less the same unless you trade him after June 1st, in which case, again, that's not really going to help the start of free agency either. So kind of fascinating that for all we talk about that contract, it's more about the overall look of the roster and sort of future stuff, as opposed to 2025 free agency, which is coming next week as well. And the line from the team has been, we want to be aggressive. And I think logic would also dictate that this is a regime, especially Fontenot, that probably needs to be aggressive. It seems the patience is starting to wear a little thin with Blank. He's typically been a very patient owner. Like, it's unusual for him to make rash decisions, and I'm not suggesting that he's going to do that. But I think the heat is on a little bit for these guys. And that, I think to a lot of people would mean that they're going to be more aggressive. But they don't have any money right now, so it's like they have avenues to do that. The salary cap is not as bad as I think it looks on paper right now, but just off the top, I mean, how aggressive do you really think this team is likely to be in free agency, given everything that's kind of swirling at the moment? I think that they are in this aggressive mode right now, and that's what they showed in August when they went after Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons on the eve of the season. They are trying to win now. This is it, and like you said, part of that is because maybe people are on the hot seat coming into 2025, and also part of it, I think they thought was, Kirk Cousins was going to be their guy, and then they were going to have a chance to win this year, and they probably should have. Things did not work out the way it goes, and that's the NFL, right? So it wasn't necessarily a bad move to be aggressive in that spot. I wouldn't say that the addition of those guys helped the defense a tremendous amount. It still struggled quite a bit for a large swath of the season. And that's what they need in free agency, right? And in the draft, they need defense. There's a lot of holes. The offense is, if they make no moves on offense, that would not be the worst thing in the world, right? I think they probably still will, but they have to do something with the defense. They need a pass rusher or two. They need probably an inside linebacker or two. They need a cornerback or two. They need a safety. They need a lot of these things in the offseason. And the draft is beneficial for them because it is deep on defense and it is deep up front, which is what they need. They talking to Raheem Morris at the Combine last week, and he really noted how the Eagles won that game. They sacked Pat Mahomes 6 times, did not even blitz the man the entire freaking game, but they sacked him 6 times, and they just dominated up front. And that is a winning formula in the NFL. And I don't expect the Falcons to have the Eagles defense in just one off season, but the Falcons got a pretty decent offense, I feel, and that could, break through in 2025. And if you put together at least an above average defense, you could be talking about a winning team. And that's what everyone wants, right? The first step is just to have a winning team in Atlanta. It's been 7 years, right? So that's the first step.
Yes, you understand. I think you've been around the team long enough now to sort of feel the malaise and the angst that has set in this 7-year drought here. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Defense is obviously going to be the focus. I totally agree with you there. I do think the one offensive piece to consider is Drew Dahlman, and he's someone who's gained an enormous amount of buzz since the Combine with rumors floating that he could be chasing Creed Humphrey's contract,
Yes. Yeah.
approaching that number. And, for those that don't know, that's nearly $20 million a year. And I do believe Drew Dahlman's a top 10 NFL center. He's arguably the NFL's best or second best zone blocking center. The pass protection is not amazing. It's fine. I think considering his run blocking chops, it's perfectly acceptable. But the money on that contract, especially given the salary cap constraints that we've mentioned, it seems like that is sort of the one offensive contract or re-signing that the Falcons may have to, at the very least, wait till free agency starts, because at this point, I can't see Dahlman not testing the market given the buzz that's going around at the moment.
When I wrote my off-season keys for the Falcons, one of them, it was 4 keys, and one of them was to re-sign Drew Dahlman, because you don't want to mess with the chemistry of a line, and he has great chemistry with those guys. He really does, and it's a line that's been together for a decent amount of time, aside from Bergeron, right? But even he's going to be in year 3 coming up, and there is a, I mean, you see it every day in the locker room. There is an affection these guys have for each other as a line, and for Coach Dwayne Ledford, and you don't want to ruin that. You want that continuity, and you want that chemistry in a line. It's so important, and that is how a line becomes better than the sum of its parts, when you have that communication, when you have that gelling together. And you don't want to lose a guy like Drew Dahlman, who, like you said, is a very good NFL center who has already that relationship with these guys. Now, Ryan Newsel did a very solid job as a backup in 2024, right? Yeah, when Dahlman was out, high ankle sprain, 8 games, did very well. It wasn't a massive drop off, and that's I think a testament to Newsel and also kind of the system that Dwayne Ledford has, and that might be the option going into 2025, because, like you said, the problem is not that the Falcons don't want to sign Drew Dahlman. They absolutely want to sign Drew Dahlman. The problem is that he is probably the best available center in free agency. And a lot of teams who think they're going to be contenders in 2025 need a center. Chicago Bears probably being the number 1, right? And they need a guy, especially with their going to his second year, Caleb Williams, who they think is going to be a breakout star. So the market is going to be extremely hot for him, and potentially more than what the Falcons are going to be able to afford, while also trying to fill those aforementioned holes on defense.
Yeah. So that it's sort of he could just price himself out of Atlanta, because I think Atlanta's probably working overtime right now trying to get him to sign, and I suspect they're going to give a competitive offer. But again, getting to 20, if it's getting up to 20 million, I mean, one thing I think Fontenot has been pretty consistent in is that he doesn't overpay for players, from a financial standpoint or a draft capital standpoint, or he tries really hard not to overpay for players. And, we've seen the Falcons miss out on guys before. Montez Sweat was a really good example of that, where the price was a second or was higher than the Falcons wanted to go. And they stood out of the market, and they matched the Texans offer allegedly for Danielle Hunter. But they wouldn't go above it, to get him in the door. They were like, this is what his worth is. So, that could very well happen again with Drew Dahlman, who I think is a top 10 NFL center, but is he worth elite offensive line money at $20 million per? That is the question they'll have to answer. But seeing Newsel step in, and again, it's kind of the thing with Dahlman is the pass protection is fine, and there wasn't a drop off in pass protection when you went to Ryan Newsel.
Mm-hmm.
The run game suffered a bit, but Newsel's also only played center for a couple of years, so it's not out of the question that you continue to develop him and you hope that you can coach him up and get more out of him at center. I
do think that if it is Newsel going into the year as the starter, I think they probably draft someone or bring in a free agent who could possibly challenge for this position, and in an ideal world, get someone in the late rounds at center who can possibly be the center of the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's very little chance that they just throw things over to Ryan Newsel, and I think they would be fine trusting him to open the season at center. But whether it's a veteran, for depth and competition, or a draft pick, I think getting center settled is something they're going to want to do, and this will kind of be Newsel's tryout, and they could give him a right of first refusal tender, and see that he doesn't hit the market. or they could just offer him a contract, as an RFA. So we'll see what they end up doing there. But yeah, the one guy I don't think is going anywhere is Ryan Newsel, one way or the other. I think they're gonna be keeping him around. But I think it would be ideal, obviously, like you mentioned, to keep Dahlman around for the continuity. But at that point, they'd be paying 3 of their offensive linemen elite contracts. So it's tough for that to be sustainable. Obviously, I can never really discount Jake Matthews being able to play forever because that's what his dad did too. And Jake Matthews obviously hasn't really shown much sign of slowing down. So I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's gonna be retiring soon." It's like I would hold off on that. He's also not that old. I think he's like 32. He's gonna be 33 this year. So it's not like this man is not that. He's my age, guys. He's not that old. Okay, but yeah,
you play left tackle, Kevin?
No, my brother could. Yeah, my brother got all the size and yeah, he's got those 10-inch hands. So he but yeah, he decided to go be a doctor or something instead of playing football. So yeah, tragic really. But yeah, it's it's a spot that I think we would love to see them keep it together and you keep the offensive line going. I think that would be great for the long term outlook of the offense, especially like you said with Penix. This is going to be his first year as a starter. Having that really consistent offensive line together would be nice. But he also, like I've seen it also mentioned, Penix has a lot of experience with Newsel, as the backup center when Penix was not the starter. Right. It is, they have a lot of experience together. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. I think that's maybe the one offensive position I would really be watching. I know there's a lot of wide receivers released today, all this other stuff. I don't really think they're going to be too aggressive anywhere else on offense, but center, we will have to see.
It's time for a meat and potatoes type of offseason for the Falcons. I think it's been a little flashy the last few years with quarterbacks and skilled players, and they got to get back to the meat and potatoes, the big boys.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how they do it. But you mentioned, defense is got to be the emphasis because, look, the last game of the season kind of sums up this team's problem, right? You have Michael Penix come in after just a couple games in the NFL and put on a show, 38 points against a division rival, and you lose the game. Because you give up 43 to an offense that was ranked in the bottom 5 of the NFL, 43 points. So I think it's pretty clear where the issues are roster wise. And the offense is in a good place. You should expect to win 95% of the games you score 38 points, There's a few exceptions, maybe if you're going up against, the Eagles or an elite, offense that you might have to get into a shootout. But, the defense is what needs the work. And you mentioned a lot of spots that need work. And this is it seems like the NFL as a whole is kind of down on this free agent class. Like they're not super enthused. And I think that's what's leading to some of these really high end contracts for the high end players that could potentially be hitting the market. But yeah, how aggressive do you think they're going to be in pursuing defensive starters with what could be a limited amount of cap space? It depends on how aggressive they want to be in clearing that cap space. But what's your sort of read on how they're going to approach this?
They have to get creative with the cap space, right? There's going to have to be at least a release, if not more. There's got to be some restructuring, several contracts, potentially a trade or two. Like they need to free up that space because they just don't have it right now. They're over right now. So they need they need to call Grady Jarrett and say, hey, can we talk about this and try to, fix this, change this number so we can get more help in 2025. And that conversation is probably going on with a lot of guys on the team right now with, restructuring and that type of deal. And I think they can only really be as aggressive as the cap allows them to be. There are a few decent, even though there isn't a lot of there's not a lot of great high profile free agents, there are a few solid players who could help the Falcons certainly at those aforementioned spots. couple guys from the Jets kind of stand out. You know, DJ Reed and Sherwood, the inside linebacker. Could they get him? I don't know. I mean, we did an exercise at ESPN where we took like the top free agents and we like made bids as if we were the team that we cover, like as if I was Terry Fontenot. I put in offers for DJ Reed and for Zach Bond. And Zach Bond, as you saw, already re-signed with Philadelphia for much more than I was able to offer.
I think it was 18 per, 20 per, something like that.
So, I think I offered like 11. You know, for as the Falcons, because that's
might as well try, you know.
Might as well try. And but yeah, I mean, I think there are guys that are, you know, that are helpful, because they probably, you know, like we said before, like they bring back Mike Hughes. You know, I think Mike Hughes is a solid player, but they need at least one more cornerback, because I'm not sure if the offer will come back. They need like a slot guy. Hobbs from Las Vegas is a free agent, and he's a pretty decent slot corner. Maybe that's a guy they look at. I don't know. And then up front, I mean, I think a few things they really had to count on, or at least hope, is that Braylon Trice comes back and becomes like a difference maker, or at least a starter, a regular at the edge, right? They need to hope that Arnold Ebiketie continues to level up, which he has done. You know, a little bit every year he's gotten better, and we've seen flashes of that. So they need to hope for that, and they need to hope that you know, Aruga Rororo, Brandon Dorlus, Zach Harrison, you know, younger guys who have upside, they start to, you know, kind of perform to the level where they were drafted, especially Rook, you know. So those are hopes, but hope is not a strategy. So you have to fill things around them. So, but I do think that because of the cap situation, there's going to be a lot of those situations where where they're going to be leaning on Jeff Ulbrich and his staff to coach these guys up and really develop them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. And I do wonder if, you know, I think I described it when I was kind of trying to work through their situation in the Twitter thread, which, you know, it's always a great idea to air everything you're thinking on Twitter. But, you know, I wonder if this could be I would consider it like a selectively aggressive free agency, and that they're probably not just going to go open the wallet for an edge rusher, because that is one of the most expensive positions. Right. And even though they need it bad, it's you're going to be paying a premium for any edge rusher that hits free agency. But you mentioned
probably be able to get a solid pass rusher at number 15. And I would even say you could even trade back, get some more, you know, draft capital, and still get a pretty decent edge rusher in the 20s, you know, maybe even in the early second round. I mean, if there's one thing this draft has, again, it's those guys up front who can rush the pass or stuff the run. You know, there's no scarcity of them. So that's if there's one thing, if you're a Falcons fan going to the offseason, that you have to like, is that, all right, well, at least we know there's the possibility of hitting on a couple of these guys up front in the first and second rounds, if not, you know, more if they trade back.
Yeah. And to me, like you mentioned it, like, given their draft situation, which is 5 picks, but only 2 in the top 100, I think a trade down they have to be planning to try to exhaust that option if at all possible. And obviously it takes 2 to tango. You never know if you're going to get an offer, but I have to think they will be desperately trying to move down from that.
For sure.
Also because of the way the draft is too. Like, they need an edge rusher, you know, or I'm sure they would be fine with a defensive tackle too. And there's a run of those guys available. Teams that need offensive tackle, a true offensive tackle, or one of the top receivers, those guys will all be gone by the time you get to 20, more than likely. So I think there could be opportunities, given the way the Falcons' needs fall, to potentially see a trade down happen. Obviously, we'll see what happens in free agency, because some of these options will materialize and others will go away based on what teams do. But I think it seems like you feel the same way, that a trade down is feeling more likely now than it has in most years for this team.
100%, just because of the, you know, I've seen scouts say like that there's not a whole lot of difference between like pick 20 and pick 60. You know, there's a lot of similar players, and not in a bad way. You know, there's a lot of players that could be potential starters in the NFL. I mean, I saw one mock draft that had, I think the Falcons getting Mike Green in the first round from Marshall, edge rusher, and then Jahad Campbell from Alabama, a linebacker, in the second round. I mean, if that's what they end up with, if you're a Falcons fan, you have to be pretty pleased by those guys. They're tremendous athletes. They're tremendous football players. But there's a few guys like that. A guy like I feel like, and this is without me, this is pure speculation, but I feel like a guy like Shamar Stewart is the kind of guy that Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich probably like a lot, just because of the measurables, the length, the arm length, and the explosiveness. And I mean, the guy is an athletic freak of nature. And even though the production was not there necessarily in college, he's versatile. He can play in the interior, he can play on the outside. I mean, he might end up going in the top 10 now. I mean, the guy's like just shooting up draft boards.
Yeah.
But I can see personnel people just salivating over that guy.
Oh yeah, no, he screams Saints edge rusher to me. It just, so I'm like, crap. Well, he's off the board. But I mean, I think they would love
a guy that's gonna give the Falcons hell for the next
for sure
decade.
He's gonna have like a quiet year one, and Falcons fans will be celebrating. I'm like, well, hold on, guys. Like, let's maybe wait a few years before we start celebrating. But he definitely feels like Atlanta's type too. I mean, you look at Rook, you look at Zach Harrison. I mean, these are the Falcons love length and athleticism with their front seven guys. So wouldn't shock me at all if he's high on their board. But yeah, you mentioned it. Deep class up front. And I think it plays in well to what I'm saying about being selectively aggressive in free agency, which is chasing value positions, which typically linebacker and safety don't get the cash. Now, Zach Bond is kind of a hybrid edge rusher, so I think he kind of breaks that mold in some ways. Right. But the inside linebackers and safeties tend to be underpaid relative to what they are. I mean, Jesse Bates is a great example. He's arguably the best safety in the game, making $20 million per roughly. So that's a bargain in my opinion compared to what he provides. And so I wonder, it's like, yes, the Falcons are already paying Caden Ellis, $8 million a year, and yes, they're already paying Jesse Bates $20 million a year, but those are the value positions. So maybe it doesn't make sense to some folks that they would double up on contracts at those spots. But you mentioned Jamie and Sherwood. That's a great example of a guy that has the coaching connection, is young, really fits what they need, which is a faster coverage backer that can just fly around the field.
Right.
Or, some safeties. I know the Seahawks just released Rayshon Jenkins. He's someone that's interesting. You can go into the high end. Javon Holland's probably going to hit the market. Trevon Merrick is probably going to hit the market. At least one of those guys, maybe. Now, those are premium options, but, those guys are, those top end safeties are maybe going to be getting 15 to 20 at most, and with Sherwood you're probably getting like 8 to 12 roughly, versus like some of these edge rushers, even these like second tier edge rushers are probably going to be pushing 15 million plus for second tier guys. So to me the value of free agency could be chasing those positions and then going, like you said, into the draft, trying to trade down and get kind of load up on these front seven guys in the first 3 rounds.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that, like you mentioned, Jamie and Sherwood, who, if he's between 8 and 11 million, I think that's right in the sweet spot for the Falcons. I think that, he's a guy that fits a need. And, you also hope that Troy Anderson can stay on the field.
Yeah. More. I love him so much.
Because
we saw it for one game and then he had to get hurt. It's like, wow. It's just
because there is potential there. Right. And the guy's a tremendous athlete, and he is the speedy middle linebacker that they need, that they were missing a lot in the run game this year. So this past year. So yeah, I mean, that's a guy they could look at. But I mean, I think that when the offseason first started and there was that idea that all of these like premium edge rushers are going to be available. Myles Garrett wants a trade. Could the Cowboys trade Micah Parsons? What about Max Crosby? The Las Vegas is in turmoil and now he's locked up, right? And I just don't think that. I don't think any of those things are going to really come to fruition. I know that when those things all happened, consecutively, Falcons fans were like, "Oh, Myles Garrett." I just don't. I don't see that. I don't see that being realistic.
Yeah, I agree. Tier 1 edge rushers almost never hit the market, and if they do, it's
Mhm.
via trade, and you're moving first round picks.
Correct.
And with the Falcons cap, it's like I mean, like
Mhm.
Myles Garrett was the one that it's like maybe they could squeeze it because his actual
Right.
cap number from the
Right.
trade will be very low.
Right.
So like maybe you could squeeze that one in, but the Browns really don't want to trade him. They may like be forced to because
Mhm.
he just is going to force his way out, but like they don't want to. So you're going to be waiting probably up until the wire to get that trade done.
Right.
If you're so I wouldn't pin any hopes on Myles Garrett.
Right.
Maybe that's more of a Hail Mary attempt,
Right.
but yeah, I agree with you for sure. Like it's unlikely you're going to get much in free agency at edge. Like you're just going to have a hard time. Maybe you could
Mhm.
find a rotational guy. You know, I think Aziz is going to get like premium
Yeah.
starting money. He's more of a rotational guy. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I think a lot of people are like, oh, Aziz, he's going to upgrade. Aziz, like, I think Aziz Ojulari and Arnold Ebiketie are kind of the same guy, like,
Yeah.
roughly,
Yeah.
which is, like, good player, but, like, are we really wanting to pay, you know, 10 plus million for that, you know,
Right.
and you know, they'll have to decide that, you know, that's not up to us, but
Right.
whereas I think a guy like Jamie Sherwood, you're talking
Mhm.
about, you know, like a young ascending linebacker, and you're
Right.
probably getting him for cheaper than you would be paying Aziz Ojulari. So they just have to start filling holes somewhere, like whatever it
That's
looks
correct.
like.
That is very true.
Yeah. It's so I think you know, they can't, and again, because of their pick situation, they can't exactly just hope for the draft to solve their problems either. You know, again, like you said, I agree that the trade down is something they're going to be working hard to achieve. The other side of that is you know, trading players. I know people have like floated some defensive guys. I don't think the Falcons are going to be trading anyone except maybe Kirk Cousins, but that's not going to get you a big pick. You know, you're really, someone's doing you a favor if you trade Kirk Cousins. So it's probably like a 6th, 7th pick swap. So maybe you upgrade one of Atlanta's 7s to a 6 or something. But I think, you know, Kyle Pitts is the one that I would circle as you could get a serious pick for him.
Right.
You know, a day 2 pick, maybe a later day 2 pick and a you know, 5th rounder or something. But what is your sort of view on that? Because the team has really come out as of late and really emphasized that they want to keep him and all this, which is exactly what they'd say if they wanted to keep him or if they wanted to trade him. So that really doesn't tell us a whole lot. But I'm curious kind of where you think things stand with Kyle Pitts and, you know, could he be on the move? That's kind of the other guy that's been floated around.
Yeah, I mean, I think with with the right deal, certainly they would be willing to move him, right? I think a day 2 pick, I think that might be enough. You know, if that comes across the desk of Terry Fontenot, I can't imagine he does not answer that call and have that discussion. It's just you know, it's tough because of Kyle Pitts is such an interesting, and it's like I feel like I've talked about Kyle Pitts more than any player except for maybe Kirk Cousins since I started on this beat last year. And it's because everyone knows how much potential he has and how much upside is there. Now, if you're the Falcons, do you want to try to sell that upside on another team? Like, hey, this guy is really good. You know, look what he's done before as a rookie. He's still that guy. He still has that, you know, these attributes, these physical attributes that make him, you know, stand out. He's the unicorn, right? Or if you're the Falcons, do you say, like, we know we can still get more out of this guy, and Michael Penix Jr. is going to be the quarterback to unlock him? So there's two schools of thought there, right? And I think the latter is probably more likely, that he'll be back with the Falcons in 2025. But again, if it's a 3rd round pick, you know, someone offers a 3rd round pick, maybe. Beyond that, it's like, are you really getting the value for what Kyle Pitts could potentially be in 2025 if it's not a 3rd round pick, if it's a, you know, maybe a 4th rounder? But if it's like after the 5th round, it's like, are you really going to be getting someone that is going to be a starter for you in 2025, who could have the big upside that Kyle Pitts has? So it's, at that point, it's like diminishing returns, right? You don't want to just get rid of him for the sake of getting rid of him. That it would be a cap. You know, it would be they would save around 10 million, I think, right, for Kyle Pitts if they traded him. But again, it's like 10 million is kind of a drop in the bucket for, again, a guy that could do what Kyle Pitts could do.
Yeah, exactly. And I personally think they just hang up the phone if you're not at least offering a day 2 pick. Like I think
Yeah.
they won't even entertain it. For exactly the reasons you mentioned. It's like
Mhm.
the upside of Pitts
Mhm.
is worth a day 2 pick regardless. But like a lot of people forget, like yes, he's on his 5th year in the NFL. He's 24 years old. He's younger than Michael Penix.
Jr.
He's younger
Yes.
than many rookies in this class. There's a
Yes.
lot of this is like the last class where there's a lot of like those COVID
Mhm.
year players that have kind of extended their college careers. There's like a decent number of rookies that will be older than Kyle Pitts.
Mhm.
And he's had a 1,000-yard season,
Mhm.
and his athletic profile is incredible, and yada yada yada, right? Like I mean, it's
Had that tremendous catch, in the fourth quarter against Washington.
couldn't have ended any
Game
stronger,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's and also the narrative around Kyle Pitts is way too extreme, and it has been for a long time, and that he's worthless, he's not a part of the like that's just objectively false. Like Kyle Pitts was a borderline top 10 tight end in the NFL last
Right.
year. Yes, he was the 4th option in the Falcons passing game. I think that was a mistake because on a per catch basis, he was drastically more productive than Ray McLeod. But, I'm clearly like team, I think this guy needs to be utilized more. And I get people that say like, well, if he needs this specialized role, how good is he really? And I would say, to that, like, well, Jimmy Graham needed a specialized role. And he's,
Sure.
knocking on the door of the Hall of Fame. So, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think you just have to have a coaching staff that's willing to do it. But, I have faith if they do hold on to him, for that turnaround. But if, if it's not a second or like a third and a fifth, to me, it's like I'm just like, yeah, no, we're gonna give it a try then. And we'll see what the offers are, because I do think they're getting offers for him. I would be shocked if they're not.
Yeah. I will say that it seemed like, and it was a small sample size, but it seemed like Michael Penix Jr. had a trust in Kyle Pitts, especially in the red zone. It cost them once. There was the interception, right? Cost them once, but that trust was there, and it seems like Michael Penix Jr. is nothing if not incredibly confident and sure of himself. He's absurdly sure of himself, like uncannily. And if he can be as sure in Kyle Pitts as he is in himself, and make Kyle Pitts believe that too, they could have a little something there.
I agree. I think this is by far, like, other than Matt Ryan in his rookie season, this is by far the best pairing I think he's had. And that isn't necessarily saying a lot, considering the quarterbacks the Falcons have had in between Matt Ryan and Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins was a good quarterback when he was healthy here. Like, I think he was playing like a, definitely above average quarterback during that 6-3 run. But, on the whole, obviously it was disappointing, but he just didn't seem to like throwing the ball to Kyle Pitts. Like, he just preferred Ray McLeod and that type of guy. And that's okay, I guess. But, Penix certainly seemed to fit Kyle Pitts' like vertical skill set a lot more, because Penix was looking to hit those vertical throws like when he could. And Cousins, understandably so, given some of the issues that he was experiencing, and was more likely to take the underneath stuff. Although Darnell Mooney and him seem to have an intense downfield connection, so good for Cousins there. But yeah, I do think that the Penix Pitts connection is much more advantageous and much more suited to Pitt's skill set. And the difficulties obviously come in the future. Like, are you really going to turn around? Like, if Pitts has a great year, are you going to turn around and give him a big contract after one good year? This is more of a long-term thing, obviously, but the tight end tag is not that expensive compared to any other position. So that is also an option. They could tag and trade him probably for a much better pick if he's coming off a tremendous year.
Sure.
He'll be 25, or they could extend him. And again, he's a tight end. So again, you're not looking at the type of crazy contract. Like, he's not getting $35 million a year like Justin Jefferson, So, but that I think behind Kirk Cousins, the Kyle Pitts situation is probably the second most fascinating thing to watch. And more than likely, nothing will happen. But, it is interesting to see, and it's been also interesting to see the kind of media blitz that the Falcons have put out around, like, we love Kyle Pitts, and we're gonna, and we're so excited to work with him. And it's like, man, I wish I could like take something from this, but like, I feel like you would say this no matter what. So unless you just like hated his guts, which, I don't think they do. I know that some fans seem to think that everybody hates Kyle Pitts, but they, I don't think they do. I think some fans seem to, but I'm one of them, so I understand.
Look, he didn't
the
pick
heat.
himself with the number 4 overall, right? I mean, he
Right.
didn't pick himself.
Yeah, I mean that's not his fault.
Yeah.
The lack of production is a lot on Arthur Smith, a lot on the lack of quarterback play, and also on himself. I'm sure he understands that very well, folks. I don't think that's a surprise to Pitts that he also needs to do better. So I think like just an off season with a quarterback that's really confident in him and that sort of thing could also just be really good for him. And hopefully this is the, we keep saying, oh, this will be the year. And everyone's like, well, how long are we going to wait? It's like, well, he's only 24. So I guess I can wait a bit longer. Like that's fine with me. It's not like he's 29 and we're running out of time here or anything. So, but it will be interesting to see what they do there and long term. But yeah, I think we've covered most of the stuff. I'm wondering if you have any like just bold predictions or like, sort of intuition, going into free agency, just that you want to share at this stage. I mean, I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on it, if you get it wrong. It's pre-free agency predictions, but
I could be completely wrong about this, but I feel like it'll be a fairly quiet free agency for the Falcons. I don't see a ton of news or a ton of high profile signings. I think, like you said, like there might be some like, role player type guys who can fill a hole on the defense. But other than that, I don't think it's going to be. Last year was an extremely splashy offseason, and I don't think it's going to be nearly as splashy in 2025.
Yeah, it's kind of where I land, and I do wonder, like, maybe we get a Sherwood signing or something like that, or maybe a safety, but otherwise some small stuff perhaps. And I think if they were able to bring Dahlman back, that would be their splash. That's their splash signing. So,
yeah.
But yeah, any day now, any minute now, we're going to start seeing how aggressive they want to be with moving cap space around. Like you said, they have some tough decisions coming up. Grady Jarrett, man, that one is tough. I think everybody wants to make it work is the vibe I'm getting. But that savings is intense. And, I wonder if we could see something like what the Dolphins just did with Bradley Chubb, where they converted a lot of salary to incentives.
Right.
So the player still has the opportunity to earn the same salary, but it's not like, it's considered not likely to be earned incentives because, like with Chubb, he missed the whole year. So obviously they could make it almost anything and it would work there. But, maybe a small extension, but I also could just see them deciding that they need the cap space desperately and they have to move on. But that would be a sad day. So
that would be a surprise to me. I'm not sure if that's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's the vibe I've been getting too, is that both sides really want to make it work. So I have to imagine they will figure some way to make it happen. There's a couple other guys, that maybe I like David Onyemata. I'm not sure there's a realistic chance of him returning given the savings. And they also just drafted a ton of guys at the position that I'm sure they want to see.
Right.
So I always kind of felt like it was going to be Jarrett or Onyemata this year, not both. And given Jarrett's clout with the team and history, it's kind of not really a fair battle between the two of them.
Yeah.
But I hope they could bring Jarrett back. He's one of the jerseys I owned. He's definitely a Falcons legend. And I would love to see him finish his career in Atlanta. So here's to hoping they can make that one work. But yeah, Mark, we did have one comment from Alex Foster saying John Cena turned heel for 17 titles, and yet Grady Jarrett supposedly wants to be loyal for one title. We got to give this man the key to the city. So that's wild to me. Just watching that wrestling match in the clips is like, wow, man, I never thought I would see the day,
I know John Cena turned heel. Can you believe it? After 23 years.
Yep. They were just saving it. So
it was great. It was an all-time moment, honestly.
Yeah. That alone is making me like, oh, I got to get back into this. And I also saw somebody in AEW tonight wearing a Mass Effect jacket. So, I'm going to have to tune into that as well.
I don't know. What is that? What is Mass?
It's a video game. And yes, so it says N7 on it. And it's like it's like a sci-fi game.
Okay.
But the N7 is like the special forces that your character is in.
Got
So
it.
I can't remember I think it was Ricochet maybe is the guy, but he
Okay.
was wearing like a leather jacket, and I was like, oh, that looks like the N7 jacket. Then you can kind of see the N7 logo
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So I was like, all right,
A
well,
lot of gamers in wrestling.
yeah, it doesn't surprise me. So yeah, Mark, it's been awesome. Really appreciated having you on. Anything else? I know you got a book. You're I believe it's done, and you're promoting it. So please tell the people about your book.
It's mostly done.
Yeah.
It is not related to the Falcons in any way, except for it does mention quite a bit Bill Goldberg, former University of Georgia Bulldog and Falcons football player. But it's about WCW, which was based in Atlanta, so there is a little bit of cohesion there, a little bit of synergy, as they say in the corporate world.
Mhm.
And it's about the NWO. If you were a wrestling fan in the '90s, and even if you weren't, probably you have an idea of what that is. Hulk Hogan turned bad and joined forces with the gentlemen on either side of him here, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and they became the hottest group, the hottest storyline in pro wrestling, maybe in pro wrestling history, and it jump-started the big pro wrestling boom of the '90s, which I tried to extrapolate in the book to show how it changed America, how it changed American culture by the anti-heroes becoming the protagonists, really, after the '80s, where it was very, very all-American heavy and the good guys and everything. In the '90s, we just love to root for bad guys, and that has kind of carried over a little bit into today's society. So I don't want to give the hard sell. It's not out yet, but pre-order is available right now on Amazon. Say hello to the bad guys, how pro wrestling's new world order changed America. And it comes out June 24th, wherever you get your books. Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I saw it's on Target's website and
Oh,
Walmart. I was
nice.
like, Lord, I was like, oh my God, it's gonna
Yeah.
be that's like real America.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. I'm gonna have to check it out. That is a fascinating premise, and I could definitely see that. I mean, you still see NWO like shirts and sweaters like today. It hasn't been a thing for 20 years, 30 years now. So.
Kevin, I wear the NWO, I wear an NWO hoodie on all of my trips, going back to when I was covering the UFC. I got it in like 2021, I think. And I swear it's like 90% of the time when I'm at the airport, someone will mention the shirt. They'll throw up like the Wolfpack sign. I mean, it's remarkable, honestly. I should be selling more pre-orders at the airport, but I am not. But yeah, if you're a fan of the NWO, if you're not, if you want to learn more about why wrestling has such a wide arching influence and impact on America, Donald Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame, guys. He is. This might be the book for you to check out.
Yeah, I mean, the pop cultural stuff is embedded in everything we do. So I think that's a fascinating premise. So I definitely have to check that out. So yeah, guys, give it a look. He's Marc Raimondi at Marc Raimondi, ESPN's Falcons beat reporter, obviously wrestling, very knowledgeable wrestling man as well. Are you still doing wrestling coverage too?
No, I'm not. Okay. This is it.
Okay. Well, we got the book. And definitely wrestling enjoyer still.
Absolutely. Yes. And that is indeed for life.
Yes.
I will always be a wrestling and always have been a wrestling enjoyer.
Well, awesome. Well, we really appreciate you guys, and I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Folks, if you enjoyed tonight's show, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want to support us, do that at Patreon or the channel memberships here. If you got questions, comments, throw those in. We always love to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think the Falcons are going to be doing in free agency. What do you think Kirk Cousins is going to be up to in a couple months? Is he going to be backing up Michael Penix at OTAs, or is he going to be on his new team?
He's going to turn heel like John Cena.
There you go. Yeah, I just can't see. I really can't see with Kirk Cousins. Everyone's like, oh, he's gonna be a headache. He's gonna be a pain in the locker. I don't think he's capable of that. He's way too nice. Like, I feel like his agent is like, Kirk, you gotta be meaner. We gotta get you out of there. We gotta do something. And he's just like, okay. And he's just like walks up to someone in the locker room like, hey, you stinker, how, and then like 5 minutes later, he's just like joking around with everybody again. So he's just not, I don't think he's capable of that. He's too nice. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching on Falcoholic Live. We appreciate you. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks again to BetOnline for sponsoring the show. And of course, thanks to Mark once again. We'll have to make this a more regular thing now that you're a friend of the show, Mark. So appreciate you coming on. And maybe we could do a pre-draft show as well. We could get the draft takes in here. I don't know how much of a draft takes guy you are, but
Love the draft. Love the
Yeah.
draft.
Okay. Well,
But the week before that is WrestleMania, so
Okay, well, 2 weeks before, we don't have to do the week before, I'm probably going to do a live mock draft that week. So,
fair enough.
But yeah, we'll work it out. But thanks again for coming on, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. We'll have, speaking of mock drafts, post-combine mock draft coming out Friday. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously, keep your eye on thefalcoholic.com for all the terrific written content. Thanks again for joining us, guys. We will see you next time on the Falcoholic Live.